All right, welcome to Bet the Edge. I'm Jay Croucher here as always with Drew Dinsick. Happy New Year, Drew. Today we're going to talk about a couple of awards markets. One is done in MVP, the other is not done. Well, supposedly not done in Comeback Player of the Year. We're going to talk about Texans-Colts, Jags-Titans, and Bills-Dolphins, the three biggest games in the AFC. But first, week 17, we haven't spoken on the pod in a few days. What was your biggest takeaway out of the week?
Well, without question, the biggest winner in terms of championship equity was the Dallas Cowboys, and they did not earn it because that was gross. The coaching performance that Mike McCarthy put out there, I guess I've lost faith that there are football gods, because you don't do what McCarthy did and then still somehow get away with a win like that. The refereeing that botched the end sucked all the air out of the room and kind of has left him unaccountable for what was one of the worst end of game coaching sequences I've seen in a while, especially in that high leverage of a game. And now, not only are they the 2 seed, potentially with the opportunity to host 2 playoff games instead of being on the road for 3. This is amazing upswing for Cowboys futures, for Cowboys championship hopes. And yes, you still have to deal with the fact that Mike McCarthy is going to do some in-game shenanigans in the playoffs. You can almost count on it. But that was the biggest takeaway from week 17. You mentioned it, Lamar Jackson sewing up the MVP with his performance against the Dolphins was an obvious takeaway. And honestly, the other big winners were the Ravens, because now they have the bye and they can get right for a playoff field that all of a sudden is kind of weird and crowded and complicated in the AFC. So that gives them huge upswing because they're not going to have to play a wild card game. So I think, biggest winners of the week, Cowboys 1, Ravens 2, and then second tier Bills. The fact that the Bills can win and get the 2 seed. Wow, what a difference a month makes, man. This team was 6-6. Everyone was throwing dirt on them. They might be your 2 seed, just like we all kind of had written in the preseason. So that's kind of the landscape as I see it. And I think people have kind of covered that this is still the most wide open playoff field this late in the season that we've ever had. Some of that is because there are 7 teams, but there's just general parity across the entire middle class of the NFL right now, which means teams like the Steelers are not eliminated, even though they very much should be. Teams like the Vikings and the Bears somehow not eliminated, even though they very much should be. So yeah, it's a fascinating kind of week 18 unfolding with kind of more at stake than we usually have this week.
Yeah, I think with the Bills, it's an incredible delta where if they beat the Dolphins, I think they're indisputably the 3rd favorite for the Super Bowl behind San Francisco and Baltimore. And if they lose, then they're likely out of the playoffs entirely. So you go from 3rd favorite to dead to the 15th team in the NFL. You go from 3 to 15 potentially, off of one Tyreek Hill bomb on Sunday night. Who knows? But I agree. They're a big winner because they can get the 2 seed. It was always going to be difficult if they were doing it from the 6. But now, their defense is healthier now, which I think is the key.
Yeah.
But their offense hasn't looked good since the Philadelphia game. And that's a little sneaky thing that Josh Allen, again, hasn't been – he hasn't really had to do anything since the Kansas City game. And he wasn't great in that game after being superhuman in Philadelphia. So, that's just one thing to watch. Now, I think they're likely going to beat the Dolphins, and we'll get to that game. But I'm a little concerned about the Bills' offense because that Patriots pass D isn't outstanding. And the Bills, at one point, Allen was like 1 of 11 or something. It was insane. And at that point, I burned all my Josh Allen MVP tickets and then burned them doubly. Lamar Jackson completed his masterpiece. With that Dallas-Detroit game, someone who's holding a lot of Stefanski Coach of the Year and also fair bit of Steichen and some Ryans, that last sequence is the most terrified I've been in a game in a long time because I came into that game thinking that the only way that Dan Campbell can still coach the year, a win isn't enough. He has to win it by coming back and going for 2 with 23 seconds left to beat the Cowboys in prime time and take the Lions to 12-4, and the coronation of the greatest regular season in Lions history. And when Decker caught that pass, I had no feelings, no emotions. I was just cold. And then physically cold, emotionally cold, spiritually cold. And then when Parsons jumped off sides, because I'm also against Parsons in the Defensive Player of the Year market, where at that point I'm like, you can have DPOY Parsons. Give me a DPOY moment. Sack Goff. And he jumps off sides like, oh my God. And then Campbell's still going for it. What a ridiculous sequence. That has to be the most memorable sequence of the year, for better or worse.
I would say so too. And yeah, it's a shame that it got kind of smushed by the reffing. But that all of those feelings were very, very similarly felt. And I had a big old bet on Cowboys to cover in that game, and I'm like watching that final. I'm watching McCarthy elect to leave Dan Campbell an extra 40 seconds because you never know. You never know. We'll just leave him an extra 40. And then watching that drive, it was like Cowboys can't make a stop. This is not good. Ultimately that that 2-point conversion would have been wild, and it would have won the coach of the year.
Yeah, I think a couple of things. One, I don't understand why these teams play so soft on defensively on these final drives down the field. It's like every single time. It's like teams are playing soft against Jalen Hurts for a month straight. It's like, can you just play a real defense? Can you play just your normal defense when the team couldn't move the ball against you at all for a long stretch outside of running the ball, which they no longer can do because they have to throw? That was incredible.
Especially because if you get burned by a big play, guess what? There's still time left.
Yes. Tying into that, the fact that, again, and McDermott is the king of this, but McCarthy did it as well. Like calling timeout for the 2-point, like you need that timeout, Mike. You need that timeout because if they score and you're getting the ball back and you need to score, and all of a sudden, like it has to be such a high threshold to clear. If you see something in the formation where you just know that it's like, oh, it's 100% that team is going to score if we maintain this. Okay, you call it in that situation. Anything short of that, the timeout is more precious. Like the timeout, you're better off, I think, forfeiting 5% of the play working or not working and just retaining the timeout at that point because it's so valuable when you have 23 seconds and you need to get down the field. And also particularly because you got Brandon Aubrey, who was touched by God and can seemingly make 70 yarders. Like you just need all that you can get to get him in position. I couldn't believe that. It was very frustrating as a Cowboys.
Yes. That ending was something. I got to go back and make a list of the 5 dumbest things that McCarthy did at the end of that game because it was something. But yeah, you're taking the time out. My goodness, Mike.
Yeah, unbelievable. So look, I don't think we really need to talk about MVP. That is done. Lamar Jackson had his masterpiece, probably the best game of his career, at least the best since the last time he completely eviscerated the Miami Dolphins in the first game of his 2019 MVP season. A nice arc there for Lamar between his 2 MVPs. So let's talk about the award, which I think is the most, I don't know if controversial is the right word, but it's certainly the most in dispute according to how it is being priced in the market, and that is Comeback Player of the Year. As we speak, at one book, Damar Hamlin is -130, Joe Flacco is +100, Baker Mayfield is 13-1, Matthew Stafford, who I don't think is going to be winning, he is 66-1. Just in the past couple of hours at some books, there has been a ton of Hamlin steam, where now he's into -170 at a couple of places. I think this is probably the strangest award to handicap that I can remember anyway. And I think just in terms of the process about how you go about it, I think there's 2 elements. One is just your own kind of subjective take based on being someone who absorbs a lot of NFL content, who has a familiarity with what resonates with voters, and then your own sense of what voters will gravitate towards between the candidates. And then the second element is a bit more objective in terms of what is actually out there and publicly or privately to some out there about the actual voter sentiment around what people think about these candidates. So I have my own thoughts about this award, but what do you think? Do you think there are bets in this market at the moment, and how do you handicap it?
I would have lost a bet that this was the most up for grabs award this week. I cannot believe that basically everything else is now mega chalk, and this one is still somehow, some way, not a done deal. I don't think voters put a ton of thought into this. I don't think that there's a lot of people who are losing sleep, who are breaking down film of should I give it to a guy who's done something I haven't seen in a while, or should we just give it to the guy who had the most severe ailment that has ever befallen an NFL player on the field and came back and played professional football again? And I think the latter is so easy as far as a narrative, and so easy as far as kind of like I wrote this column in August. We could just fill in a couple of details and hit submit, and kind of move on to all pro off ball linebacker. like there's definitely more important things for a lot of these people to be thinking about and doing than kind of really splitting hairs over this particular award. And we made jokes about this on this podcast, I believe, out loud, not behind the scenes, but like, Hamlin's going to be a finalist. He's going to the award ceremony. Like, I'm not really ready to see him be announced as a finalist and then him give the award to Joe Flacco. Like, it's very cool that Flacco is performing as well as he is, having gotten off of his couch, but it's not a comeback story that I think people are dying to write. And honestly, like, he should, and everyone in the Browns universe should be focusing much more on what Stefanski has done, and focusing much more on trying to make a playoff run, because of all the teams that are in those wild card slots right now, the Browns are clearly have one of the more dynamic units with that defense. So they are definitely not out of the mix to kind of continue this magical run. So yeah, I mean, I think Hamlin is the right bet. I know the places you're talking about where it took some steam. I was surprised to see those markets there. And I may have bet some because I think it should be more like minus 200. And I don't think Flacco in the plus 100 range is going to get there. Now, like, if you got an enormous price on Flacco and you're super excited about it, like, yeah, you made a fun bet, because I don't think a lot of people saw this coming, but like, you probably could have put that money to work just betting the Browns last month.
Yep. I think so. A couple of things. One, a lot of people have issues with the fact that, Hamlin has only played 17 snaps and he's not a meaningful part of the Bills football quest this season to make the playoffs or whatever. Like, he's not a big part of the team, just purely in a football sense in terms of on the field. But this award is not by definition a performance award. It is by literal definition, according to NFL.com, it is given to a player who shows perseverance in overcoming adversity. That is the definition of the award. It is not about having the best PFF grade. It is very, amorphous and vague, and gives people room to vote for whatever they want and whatever resonates with them. A couple other things. One, I think, as much as some people will have an issue, and Hamlin's not going to win unanimously or anything. Some people are definitely not going to vote for Hamlin, but people also have an issue, not just with Hamlin not playing that much. People have an issue with people not coming back from anything outside of being bad. 22 people out of 50 didn't vote for Geno Smith first on their ballots last year. They voted for McCaffrey and Saquon Barkley and Nick Gates, guys who are coming back from actual injuries. Brandon Graham got a couple of votes. So that's one thing. And then two, I think there's this idea that Flacco, who has played 5 games, is live because Hamlin has played so little as well. I think that's a fallacy, because everything that I have read from voters is that Flacco is not being compared to Hamlin, because you cannot compare anyone to Hamlin. He exists in his own sphere. He's his own case. Flacco is being compared to Baker Mayfield, principally, and then also Tua Tagovailoa and Matthew Stafford, guys who have played the full season, while Flacco has played 5 games and has 13 touchdowns and 8 interceptions and a ton of passing yards. And he is a cult phenomenon. But I think that people are conflating amazing story with wins comeback player of the year. And that is a really long, I just can't make that connection based on everything that is out there at the moment. To me, Flacco, and people have made this comparison, but Flacco comeback player of the year to me is very Brock Purdy offensive rookie of the year last year, where Purdy played 6 games and he went 6-0 and he was Mr. Irrelevant and he was a cult phenomenon. and he didn't have a prayer in the final vote because people just couldn't get past the games played. Now with Hamlin, I think he can get past the games played because he came back from the dead. It's a bit different. It's not a performance aspect. So I think and bringing this back to the pricing and everything, I think minus 130 on Hamlin based on everything that is out there is frankly an insane price.
Yeah.
I think that if anyone has the ceiling to beat him, I think it would be Baker Mayfield in terms of clinching the division, going back into Carolina, the team that released him last year, beating them. He has been statistically about the 10th best quarterback in the NFL. He has an arc where he was on 4 teams in 12 months. He was the number 1 pick. He led the Browns to the playoffs. He has a proper comeback arc. And if there are enough people who want to go away from Hamlin, I think that Mayfield could potentially get there. I just don't see it for Flacco because if you vote for the story, you vote for Hamlin. And if you vote for on-field production, you vote for Mayfield. And now if Mayfield loses to Carolina, it gets a little bit more chaotic. But then I don't think it's like every Mayfield voter flips to Flacco. Like some of them will flip to Hamlin. Some will flip to Stafford too. Some will definitely flip to Flacco. But you add all that up, and I just don't see how Flacco is remotely close to his current price. And the last thing I'll say on this is that I've reached out in my own network of people who are not necessarily voters, but voter types. People I know who are like beat writers for teams who work in television on like NFL pregame shows. I just asked them and presented without bias, like, who's your top 3 for comeback player of the year? And I would say that 90% of people have said Damar Hamlin, and then 10% have said Mayfield. And every single one of them has had Mayfield over Flacco because Mayfield has played the full season. So look, that doesn't mean that Hamlin's going to win the award, but I just think that it was interesting to me that there was that much consensus among people who are voter types relative to the current market price.
Yeah, no, I think that's well said. The closest analog we have in recent history was the Alex Smith year. Literally, Alex Smith's leg broke, and that day, everyone who watched football and understands the game was like, "Well, that's the last time he'll ever play." Like, there's no coming back from that. And he did come back. He started 6 games for the Washington football team. He was not very good. 6 touchdowns, 8 picks, pretty lousy game by game type of numbers. He got 49 votes because people were amazed that he came back to the football field. Like, it was leg amputation on the table for him, and now he is back playing quarterback. This is crazy. And the same thing is true of Damar Hamlin. It was life or death for him, and he came back and played football. And I don't know if he's going to get 49 out of 50 votes, but I think it's going to be a pretty clean win from him. And by the way, the one person who voted for a quarterback that was not Alex Smith that year voted for Ben Roethlisberger, who started 15 games. So there's always some weirdness, and there are people who don't want unanimous winners, and so they find reasons to vote for other people. So Flacco might get a vote, but I think ultimately, this Hamlin number ought to be closer to 400.
Yep. No, I agree. And I think with Flacco, he has so much momentum at the moment, and it's a cult phenomenon thing. And I think if you put out a poll on Twitter for everyone who has ever commented about comeback player of the year, about who is the comeback player of the year, I think there's a real chance that Joe Flacco would win that poll because of recency bias and this sugar high. But I don't think that makes him the voters' choice for comeback player of the year. And I think that ultimately, when it's all said and done, I think Hamlin will win. I think he will win relatively comfortably. I wouldn't say that Flacco is 0% just because we don't have enough of a sample to make those kind of declarations, but I would be pretty stunned ultimately if he wins this award, and I would have Mayfield favored over Flacco. But I agree. I think Hamlin is minimum 75% and potentially 85% plus. So I would be surprised if he loses this award. All right, before we get to Texans-Colts, don't miss a doubleheader of Big Ten basketball in the Great Lakes State. This Thursday, the action starts when Penn State takes on Michigan State at 6:30 p.m. Eastern, followed by a nightcap of Minnesota and Michigan at 9 p.m. Both matchups can be found exclusively on Peacock. All right. Last thing on comeback play, I just wanted to add, I think a lot of the Flacco hype and sentiment is based around, one, kind of people yelling on Twitter, which I don't think is representative vote, and then two, people who have bet on Joe Flacco to win comeback player of the year. which I think is a big element of the discourse these days. All right, Texans-Colts. Texans opened 1.5-point dogs at Indianapolis. They flipped to 1-point favorites. Wasn't a great injury report for Indianapolis today. Ryan Kelly, their star center, is in a walking boot. Quentin Nelson didn't practice with an ankle. Braden Smith, who was limping around in the Raiders game, he was a limited participant with his knee injury. Expected he will go. The Texans had a lot of guys on the injury report too. Noah Brown is apparently doubtful to play, which is kind of a problem given they're already down Tank Dell. Jonathan Greenard, who's been just about their best defensive lineman, along with Will Anderson this season, he is in some doubt too. The total here is 47.5. Do you think that the flip to Houston being favored is warranted?
I do, but it's simply because of the cluster injury in the offensive line, which I don't know how real it is. It caught me by surprise. Certainly, I didn't think that we were going to see this severe of an injury report for the Colts. And some of my guess is this is such a high leverage game. They're going to push through it, and these guys are going to play hurt probably. The news on the Texans wide receivers, I think, is being a little bit undercovered. You mentioned it. Noah Brown doubtful. I've heard out. And then similarly, Robert Woods isn't coming back anytime soon, which leaves you with Nico Collins and some question marks beyond that in the wide receiver depth chart. Similarly, you have kind of a pretty clear, I think, tendency for where CJ Stroud wants to attack on the field, where he's most interested in trying to attack on the field. It doesn't really fit what Dalton Schultz is bringing to the table. Like Dalton Schultz's most effective games felt like they came with Case Keenum under center. So I think there's a little bit of a potential here for the Texans offense to have some hiccups. They're on the road. The Colts defense is average and at least healthy. And then, yes, I was preparing for our show today, kind of intending to make the case for here's why I bet the Colts. And then I saw the injury report and I didn't bet them. So I had said I went and played the under because I think that even if these guys push through injury, the pass rush for the Texans is playing well. They have some effective kind of ways of generating pressure. Gardner Minshew is not great under pressure. And if there are, if Ryan Kelly, particularly the center, if he is not good to go, that's massive. But Smith as well has been playing well for them at tackle. He definitely matters. And I think really and truly the grand scheme of this game, if you could have a one-dimensional Texans offense, because they really can't run the ball effectively, with limited weapons going up against the Colts team that is not pass protecting well and really just kind of leaning on the run game, trying to shorten the game a bit. The fact that this is a high leverage game as well and a primetime game and a road game for the Texans, all of it kind of checks every box for me that this could be a lot more of a low scoring affair than, what a fair price would be if this was a totally neutral game. So for me, under 47.5 was the play. I think that's good to 46.5 personally. 47 is obviously a key, as you could have this game decided by that field goal. So, this is going to be a close call, and I would expect the under is going to be the only bet I have on this one.
Yep. I think your point about the Colts and their cluster injuries on the offensive line, I think that is really key because we saw what Gardner Minshew looked like for a couple of weeks without Braden Smith when the rookie Blake Freeland was filling in at right tackle, and he's just a complete disaster. And Minshew is under siege, and Minshew under siege is no good because you need Minshew for him to succeed. He needs to have a perfect context as much as possible. Now, I do think Stroud is going to be under siege as well because this Colts D-line has been one of the surprise stories of the season. With Samson Ebukam having a huge year. DeForest Buckner obviously is a star. Kwity Paye's made a leap. And then Grover Stewart coming back as well against the pretty injured and not great overall Texans O-line. So I think that will be one element of the game. Also, I think that Stroud is going to get free for some big plays down the field because these Colts corners, this Colts secondary in general, isn't particularly good. What I would be afraid of if I was on the Colts is that just the nature of the Texans defense is that they're elite against the run and really poor against the pass. And that means that the game is very likely going to be in Gardner Minshew's hands, which is somewhat terrifying. So I think that Texans -1, I don't see any reason why that would be the wrong line given the Colts injuries currently. Last thing on this game, do you think there's any chance that the winner of this game, should they win the division the following day if Jacksonville lose to the Titans, or even if that doesn't happen, do you think the winner has any chance to supplant Mr. Stefanski as coach of the year?
I don't, but I also don't understand 100% how fast things got out of control in the coach of the year market. Like, if it, I don't know. It feels like right now it's decided. And I don't have any evidence to refute that. And I also don't think that the fact that you would win because the Jaguars are losing and you're not going to have that moment where people are like, oh yeah, like you won the division, you get a home game now, like well done. Like if it was the primetime game, like on Sunday, and the Jaguars had already lost, maybe we would, I would be looking at it a little differently. But ultimately I think, this is, probably going to be a little bit forgotten in the craziness that is the final day of the season, when it's all said and done, and you'll get some flowers and some pats on the back and some consolation votes, but I don't think you're winning.
Yep. No, I tend to agree. I think Ryans has the highest ceiling because the perception of the Texans coming into the year was lower, and they're also just a way more fun team than the Colts. Like that's just how it works. People have paid more attention this year to the Texans than the Colts, even though I think the Colts is arguably an even better story because they lost their quarterback for the whole year. And what Steichen has done is remarkable. But I think that the Texans have the highest ceiling. But the problem is that Ryans got absolutely destroyed by Stefanski like 10 days ago in Houston. Yes, he had a backup quarterback. Stefanski's on his fourth quarterback, so that doesn't mitigate anything. So I agree. This feels done to me. I wouldn't say that Steichen or Ryans are like 0% if they win the division, but relative to the current 10-1 prices in the market, I don't think it's particularly appetizing, and it feels somewhat done. All right.
Okay.
Before we get to Jags Titans, PGA Tour season tees off in Hawaii this week as golf's biggest stars hit the links in Lahaina. It's the Century, and you can watch Thursday through Sunday on NBC Golf Channel and Peacock. All right, Jags Titans -5.5. Jags favored. Total is 40 flat. Looks like Trevor Lawrence should be able to go. Not 100% on that, but that is the sense at the moment. Looks like it's probably going to be Ryan Tannehill at quarterback, though it doesn't seem like that is assured either. Do you think the Jags win and cover here to clinch the AFC South?
I don't think they cover. It's a big number. It's probably going to get bigger. I haven't bet it yet because I am hoping to get a 6 on Tennessee. I have had mixed results the last handful of weeks fading the Jags. It was going great until it wasn't. And that was really that Panthers letdown more than it was even the way that you saw the Jags play. I will say that the Jags defense finally performed a lot, up to the task. And that had been a long time coming where they just really weren't generating much pressure on top of their linebacking core just getting exposed. And I think the Titans can game plan with their weapons to move the ball pretty successfully against this Jaguars defense. I think the Jaguars defense is still, broadly overrated. Like any type of DVOA and EPA type of number, which tells you they're better than league average, I would take strong exception to. And I think, this is with Ryan Tannehill potentially back, maybe making his final start for the Titans. This could be, a decent opportunity for him to put some tape out there that he's still got something to be signed next year. Cause I don't think he's done playing football, but, certainly Tannehill and Hopkins they have some chemistry. And certainly, the Jags, there's no love lost between these franchises in terms of the Titans just rolling over and playing for a draft choice next year. They're going to try. The question is, does that matter? Because the Titans have a miserable O-line. So the Jags pressure, if it's available, if it manifests, could be, somewhat problematic for Tennessee to deal with. And the Titans defense right now is a little bit of a skeleton crew. They are currently performing quite poorly. So it could be issues for Titans in the secondary, although the weapons here for Jacksonville are starting to get very thin. Behind Calvin Ridley, we're going to get probably a healthy dose of Parker Washington and Elijah Cooks. I don't know about the health or availability of Zay Jones. I know he seemed like he was close last week, but then ultimately it was a no, was a scratch. So this might be a lot of Travis Etienne, who looks like he's where he's wearing a lot of the fatigue of being such a featured part of their offense this season. No Jamal Agnew now. Evan Ingram is going to be leaned on pretty heavily, I would imagine, and Trevor Lawrence coming off of a shoulder injury, playing through it. Like I'm not expecting a full strength Trevor Lawrence. So this number looks inflated to me on the idea that the Jags are, kind of fixed now that they, thumped the Panthers, but it's a road game for them and it's against a divisional opponent that knows them well. And, there's a lot of examples of, Titans being able to manifest a final performance here and give them some trouble. So I haven't bet it yet because, again, I'm waiting to see confirmation that Lawrence plays. Hopefully this moves to 6, maybe even 6.5. And at that point, I think this is Titans or pass.
Yep, I agree with you there. And I think that Tannehill is a market upgrade over Will Levis for the purposes of this game. And as someone who needs the Titans to pull this out for some Colts and Texans divisional tickets, I hope that it is Ryan Tannehill. We have the injury report just came out 5 minutes ago for Texans-Colts. And here are the guys who did not practice for the Houston Texans. Will Anderson, Noah Brown, Malik Collins, Jonathan Greenard, Sheldon Rankins, that's their entire defensive line, Laramie Tunsil, Robert Woods. And the line has just flipped to Colts -1.5.
Yeah. So in rough order, matters a lot, matters a lot, matters a lot, matters.
Yeah. That's not great. Now, a lot of these guys played and finished the game. To be fair, Ryan Kelly, Braden Smith, Quentin Nelson, they all played the whole game.
Yeah, that's why I was just shocked.
I suspect we're probably just going to see all of these guys, except for maybe Greenard and Noah Brown. I think those are the two guys we're going to miss, but that's just speculation on my part. But in a win or go home game, when guys finish the previous game, you suspect that they probably are going to play. All right. Before we get to the big one, bragging rights in the AFC East and playoff positioning is on the line when Josh Allen and the Bills travel to South Beach for a battle with Tyreek Hill and the Dolphins. The winner will claim the division crown, and the loser must hit the road in the wildcard round of the playoffs. Well, the Bills could be out altogether. Coverage of the Week 18 matchup begins at 7 p.m. Eastern, only on NBC and Peacock. All right, Bills -3 at the Dolphins. The total is 50. Does that total strike you as too high, given the way that Buffalo's offense has struggled and the way that Miami's offense is banged up at the moment?
It does, yeah. I think this is, again, like I've been playing a lot of Miami unders with mixed results. 2 weeks ago against Cowboys, wonderful. Last week against the Ravens, not so great. And yeah, 50 does seem high, particularly because, we mentioned it. The Bills were big winners last week. Dolphins were big losers because it wasn't just the actual kind of one seed slipping through your fingers with that loss. In absolute meaningless portion of the game, Bradley Chubb tears his ACL. Xavier Howard gets hurt, albeit they are now softening their tone in terms of how serious that injury is. So this, vaunted Dolphins defense, which, since the return of Jalen Ramsey against the Patriots was grading at a top 3 level, maybe top 2, maybe top 1. They got their what's handed to them yesterday, and on Sunday, and it was not impressive, not pretty. I didn't see the scheme failures of what Fangio was trying to do being that likely to manifest. And if you want to hang it entirely on Lamar just having a throwback all-timer, and that was what happened, then so be it. But the Dolphins defense is a tough grade right now with the attrition in terms of healthy bodies. Dolphins offense also is a huge question mark. Tua left the game with a shoulder injury at one point, not expecting Jalen Waddle to make a return for this one. He would maybe kind of keep an eye on him for the playoff spot or for their playoff game. And, the injuries to the offensive line for the Dolphins are fairly well covered. You're kind of running out of healthy bodies to run the offense you want to run, on top of the fact that the defense just got absolutely eviscerated. So Dolphins are in a nasty spot here, although they are at home, which this time of year definitely matters. And the Bills are now winning with defense, which is insane. You mentioned it. The Bills game against the Patriots was truly bizarre. They got so many gifted short fields and still were fiddling around in that game to the tune of, like, is this actually going to potentially be an upset? Like that, there was no excuse for that game to be competitive, and yet it was. So I don't really know what to make of this Bills offense. You remember when they used to have a player named Stephon Diggs? He was great. He really has made a huge difference. It doesn't really feel like, for whatever reason, he's as big of a part of the offense anymore, which is confusing to me. Now, if they're keeping him in bubble wrap, if they're keeping the Josh Allen design runs in bubble wrap for the playoffs, then maybe that's something we see in this game that we haven't recently. But I don't know. There's some very, very strange signs going on with what this Bills offense is actually capable of in terms of a ceiling. And it's been a number of weeks since we've really seen them put together a truly high octane effort. It's funny, like, Josh Allen had MVP buzz for a bit there. I got why. I understood why. He's anchored as a top 3 quarterback in the NFL, so he's going to have that buzz when they're winning games. But through the back half of the season, their MVP has been what McDermott has done to coach up the young players on the defensive side, combined with James Cook, who's had a breakout under Joe Brady. So, yeah, really, really, really strange Buffalo Bills team to handicap. And I think what I kind of would try to take away from all this is that the market's just not pricing them correctly, right? And I'm not saying like the overall rating is like wildly off, but I do think that directionally it's off, and that you shouldn't have, like, market rating for Buffalo right now is like top 2. Market rating for the defense is still kind of borderline top 10. That's probably backwards. I don't know. I don't know if the defense is top 2, but they should definitely be higher. And the offense shouldn't be anywhere close to top 2 the way they're playing right now. So I think this is going to be a hard fought game. I think that 3 is fair, and not dying to get involved with the side here, even though it's going to be a great game. Feet to the fire. Only thing I would realistically consider would be the under 50. I do remember feeling pretty confidently in the under at the end of last season when Miami had 2 games in a row where their offense got punked against the Niners and then against the Chargers, and then they went on third roadie in a row against Buffalo, and I was like, man, these guys are going to be gassed. They're going to struggle. And that game had like 65 points. So these are weird kind of outcomes a lot of the time at the end of the season, and I don't think there are, like, especially mega locks this week for any stretch of the imagination. But I do think a fair total here is probably around 47. So if you want to get involved with this one now, 50 is fine. I don't think you're going to see anything in the injury report for either of these teams that all of a sudden, like, this goes up, right? Yeah. Like, there's not going to be a positive surprise of either of these offenses looking great. So, this one could be like, I would say like 26-23 type of final score.
Yeah, I think it's probably not accurate, but it feels like the best unit of these 4 teams, the 4 units at the moment, is the Buffalo defense, which would have ranked 4th for pretty much the entire season. But now that they're just healthy, they have Daquan Jones, who finally came back. Epinesa is back. Micah Hyde is back. Rasul Douglas, who no one talks about, but he's one of the best corners in the NFL. They just inserted him in halfway through the season. And now I think that, the team that was getting that Joe Burrow was just marching on Sunday Night Football a couple of months ago, like that, where the defense just had no chance whatsoever. Now I think it's just a legitimately good above average unit. I don't understand what's happening with the offense for Buffalo at all. I have no idea what happened to Miami's defense against Baltimore, where that Baltimore drop back offense had been merely above average all season. And then Lamar puts up 56 on them. It just didn't make a great deal of sense at all. So I don't know what to make of the Miami defense. And now they have injuries. There's going to be no Xavier Howard. to your early point, there's going to be no Bradley Chubb. Jalen Phillips is already done for the year. And Tua, who I don't like piling on Tua because he and Purdy are the two most piled on quarterbacks. And I think Tua's great. I think he's a top 10 quarterback in the NFL. I thought he was terrible against Baltimore. And some of the decisions he made, some of the balls he let go, he was not good in that game. And now he gets an easier matchup because he's not going up against the Ravens defense. But still, I would lean Buffalo just with the amount of health factors at the moment. I think I'm not super confident in their offense covering the -3, but I'm with you on the total that it should be sub 50. All right, before we get out of here, quick thought, national title game. Not ready to talk emotionally about college football after what Alabama did to me and my heart yesterday. Well, not really my heart, more my bank account, which is sometimes correlated with my heart. Michigan are 4.5-point favorites over Washington, which was stunning to me that was the line, given how Washington were just 10.5-point dogs to Oregon 2 games ago.
Yeah.
The total is 55.5. I thought, because I had an Alabama title ticket, which is now worth as much as the grass that Jalen Milroe tripped over on the 4th and 3 from the goal line. I thought that Alabama were going to be touchdown favorites in the game if they played Washington. Clearly that was wrong. What do you make of the line? What do you make of this Washington team and how their power ratings fluctuated from being 3-point favorites home to Oregon to 10.5-point dogs? Neutral site Oregon, and now 4.5-point dogs to Michigan. I don't know. What is this?
I mean, I think the term is East Coast bias, because it's almost like there's an entire kind of awakening that, oh, whoa, Penix is good. Whoa, yeah. Rome might be wide receiver too. like all of a sudden people are watching Washington and they're like, whoa, wait a second. These guys aren't frauds. And I think they had their biggest game of the season at home against the Oregon Ducks in the regular season. And then after that kind of went through some growing pains and then peaked again late. And people are just, I think, kind of a little bit too excited about this team, considering the monsters they're up against on the defensive line for the Michigan Wolverines. Holy smokes. Yesterday's outcome was almost entirely, in my opinion, decided by the domination of the offensive line at the hands of the Michigan D line. It was unbelievable to watch on a down-by-down basis. I was at one point like, how is Alabama winning this game? Milroe is getting sacked on every other drop back. Like, what is happening? Like, this is crazy. And that I don't think that was necessarily as big of an indictment on the Alabama offensive line as it was just confirmation that Michigan's D-line is for freaking real. And if they get an average performance out of McCarthy and they get kind of a better, I guess, a more well-coached, a less mistake-ridden kind of performance out of their head coach, then I think Michigan can win that one by margin. So I'm with you. I was surprised it was 4.5. I'm not trying to disrespect Washington because they've been a fun watch all season long, and I would hope it's a competitive, good college, good final. But this looks pretty clearly like a bet on Michigan to me.
Yeah, I agree. And this is certainly not the sport I'm most well versed in, but I was stunned at this line, the fact that it's so low. And I agree. I didn't understand what Saban was doing and what Alabama were doing in the first half, where the game plan seemed to be, all right, let's go empty and get Jalen Milroe sacked 5 times and a half. I don't know how that took him a half to adjust that. How about we don't go empty because they're blitzing constantly and they're beating us when they rush 4 anyway. So didn't understand that. Didn't like a lot of things at the end of that game. To be fair, some of them were outside of Alabama's control, but that was a insane game, and I could not get involved with Washington at this price, even if they have the more trustworthy quarterback. And JJ McCarthy he's an adventure. I don't think Harbaugh wants the game or the title in his hands. He really could have thrown the game-losing pick on 3rd and 2. I think 3rd and 2 before the 4th and 2, where he just threw it into some arms. And then the tipped pass down the end, that also, I mean, it's a tip ball, so you don't put that on him as much. But yeah, I suspect that this is going to be a Blake Corum game. All right. We are done. Don't forget to check out NBCsports.com for more information to help you with your wagers. Thanks for those of you watching on the NBC Sports YouTube channel. And if you're listening to us in podcast form, don't forget to rate and subscribe. Also, a reminder to find all your favorite NBC Sports shows on Amazon Music. Just head to amazon.com/NBC Sports. From Jay Croucher and Drew Dinsick, we'll see you soon.